why you started to bodybuild or whatever you call it.
Because I was a Terra incel and I never had, a full court shots chance at getting a girl. So I coped my way into the gym. I said, hey, let me go on a dirty bulk until I'm 250 pounds and acne-ridden fat and I thought that would solve all my problems. I thought being a bloated, pizza-faced jester would save my problems. That's why I started working out, okay? That's why.
Everyone has insecurities in one form or another. It's just part of being human. You're probably starting to think about your own as I say this. Whether it be your perception of yourself as a person, your social and romantic life, your skill set, or the one we'll be focusing on today, your appearance. I'm certain most people will be harsher on how they look than any other person will be, whether they let it on or not. I'm not gonna lie and say that looks don't matter. It's undeniable that they do. Whether subconsciously or not, scientifically, people are more likely to favor, trust, and think more highly of attractive people, even if they aren't attracted to them personally. This is known as the halo effect. Most people choose to accept this and go on with their lives, either content in being conventionally attractive or learn to accept being chopped. But this single fact haunts others, blaming their failures in romance and their personal and professional lives on it, and obsessing over it. And this can lead these people down one of two paths. Either they grovel and beat themselves up over not looking good enough, or they try to fix this conundrum by any means necessary. And the second thought process is what leads us to the topic of this video: Looksmaxxing. But what is Looksmaxxing? Looksmaxxing is a term that at its core simply refers to maximizing one's appearance. And well, a lot of it is down to genetics. Looksmaxxers try to overcome this through various forms of self-care, or in some cases, self-mistreatment, to make themselves as conventionally attractive as possible, sometimes to the point of becoming uncanny. The thought process that drives Looksmaxxing is that appearance is the most important aspect of oneself, and that being attractive is the end-all be-all of social interactions, which, as a concept, isn't as far from the truth as many of us would care to admit, but it would be disingenuous to pretend it's the only factor at play. But we'll revisit that later. While Looksmaxxing can be done by anyone, it is largely adopted by men. Women are socially conditioned to be very conscious of their appearance, and society already expects them to maintain their appearance through makeup and self-care that is not typically expected from men. But what this means is that these men are giving themselves a taste of the female experience, whether they'd be offended by that framing or not. There's typically two types of Looksmaxxing that are acknowledged: soft maxing and hard maxing. Soft maxing refers to techniques to improve one's appearance that are low risk and normally habit-based, like skincare or going to the gym, while hard maxing is higher risk and often irreversible, and sometimes involves medical intervention, like plastic surgery or steroids. Looksmaxxing is a relatively new term for a very old concept of self-care, just taken to the extreme. But that's not all it is. There's so much community and culture built around that concept that goes so much further than what I've brought up. So let's dive into the deep end and talk about it. Flashback to around 2014. There was a growing discontentment stemming from right-wing circles online towards the feminist movement that was gaining traction at the time, which led directly into Gamergate. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what Gamergate was, but just a quick recap. These male gamers, who were typically not the most successful with women, were really angry about feminism finding its way into gaming and gaming journalism at the time. And by this, I mean they were upset at women existing in their circles. Gamergate stems from sexism and misogyny, and led to severe online harassment campaigns against female video game critics and developers, and unofficially led through 4chan and Reddit. A lot of the participants in these campaigns were unsurprisingly celibate, which led them to adopt the label of incel, short for involuntary celibate, despite these actions they were taking making the celibacy seem very voluntary. While incel as a term on its own is pretty self-explanatory, the communities that built around this were extremely hateful and adjacent to the alt-right, blaming women for their problems, further digging themselves into this hole of celibacy and groveling because no foid would show them attention. Oh yeah, they called women foids, because that is clearly a speedrun to getting laid. Right, guys? Now, these communities were tight-knit, with in-jokes and slang forming, and seeing as these incel circles were right-wing, they co-opted the concept of the red pill and the blue pill from the Matrix to be applied to the American political sphere, with red representing the Republicans and blue representing the Democrats, despite a lot of these community members being much further right than the Republicans were at the time. But you might be wondering how this is at all related to Looksmaxxing, but we're getting there, trust me. Let me introduce you to the concept of the black pill, or BP for short, which was coined in these circles to refer to the belief that one's success in life, especially romantically, is fully dependent on their physical appearance. And taking it is to accept that you will never be able to succeed as much as your better-looking counterparts. The basic principle is the uglier you are, the more doomed you are. This mindset seems to base someone's entire self-worth around how they appear and stems from insecurity. But this is only one edge of the sword, because as some would take this as acceptance, others took it as a challenge. This is where the term Looksmaxxing was coined, where some of the members of these communities branched off to work on improving their appearance to compete romantically with their more genetically gifted peers and improve their sexual market value, or SMV for short. This growing community, splintering off from inceldom, would retreat to new forums online to give each other feedback on how to improve their appearance. And while this community was still sexist and right-wing, they slowly grew further and further away from the term of incel, but still stayed relatively underground until the 2020s. Most of the forums and online communities they retreated to were still incel adjacent, such as PUA Hate, Slut Hate, and Lookism.com. A lot of these forums are now defunct, seeing as Looksmaxxing eventually tried distancing itself from its incel roots, to varying success. But this original trifecta of forums was referred to as PSL, which was an acronym of the first letter of each of these forums' names. But this resulted in the coining of the concept of PSL ratings, which was a rating system of one's appearance 1 through 8, opposed to the typically used 1 through 10 rating system to rate someone's appearance. While this all paints these original Looksmaxxers as deeply hateful people, which, don't get me wrong, they were, I see this all stem from insecurity of being inadequate. A lot of these original incels and Looksmaxxers weren't even that bad looking to begin with, but society let them fall through the cracks and fall victim to deeply crippling self-image and body image issues, because they didn't know whether to blame women on a whole or their appearance for their lack of romantic success. But based on how they interacted with the world, I'm willing to bet far more of it boiled down to them being degenerate weirdos on the internet obsessed with skull shapes and facial symmetry. Just my 2 cents. But not all of what they were saying was wrong. Like I mentioned, attractiveness does play a great deal in how the world perceives you, but what plays a greater deal is the type of person you are. As much as these Looksmaxxers ascended, in their words, a lot of them found that they were still struggling romantically, because appearance is what draws people in and makes them interested in you. But if you're a piece of shit, a lot of women still won't want to sleep with you. Not all of them, though. Hit my line, ladies. At a point, self-proclaimed Looksmaxxers started to become the very thing that caused their community to form in the first place. They were so doom-pilled and were sorrow-maxing over how much society based people's worth around their appearance, only to turn around and do the exact same thing. I mentioned the PSL ratings earlier, and based on this, they built a hierarchy to more easily rate someone's appearance. The bottom of the pyramid was sub 3, which just meant anyone with a PSL of 3 or below, or people who most of the general public would consider ugly, with the sub prefix being interchangeably used as less than, or an abbreviation for subhuman. As embarrassing as viewing the world through this lens is, I'm not gonna lie and say that this is not fucking hilarious of them. It is so insanely fucking funny to see someone ugly online and just be like, yeah, you're a sub 3 subhuman. Regardless. Next was sub 5, which was the same concept, but generally just people who looked a bit below average. The next 3 on the hierarchy are pretty connected, which are LTN, MTN, and HTN, or low-tier normie, mid-tier normie, and high-tier normie, respectively. Normie in this context just meaning an average-looking person, with the low-tier and high-tier just meaning a bit below average or a bit above average. So it's just degenerate talk for normal people. The top 2 ranks of the hierarchy were Chad Light and Chad. Chad was already used as incel slang for years before this to mean a peak performance, attractive, sexually active man, usually used in disdain. Think the concept of an alpha male. Seeing as Looksmaxxing originated within the incel community, it was inevitable some of the terms would carry over and transform over time. Chad was someone for incels to despise. but Chad was someone for Looksmaxxers to strive to become. Ascending to Chad is almost every Looksmaxxer's end goal. On the other hand, the male Looksmaxxing hierarchy was different than the female, with the normie tiers being replaced by LTB, MTB, and HTB, with the B standing for Becky, which was just a term they used to refer to an average-looking woman, and Stacy Light and Stacy to replace Chad Light and Chad, with Stacy just being the female equivalent to Chad. I wonder why these people didn't have sex. Well, Looksmaxxers lower on the pyramid always had more to strive for. Those who somehow reached a PSL rating of 7 or 8 and ascended to Chad Light or Chad really started letting it get to their head, being assholes and saying shit like Chad does what Chad wants. And you want to know the worst part of all of this? Chad did do what Chad wanted. The halo effect was fully at play, and people were just letting these smooth-skinned, chiseled jawline, roided-out men walk all over them. Not everyone, obviously, but self-respect is something people are lacking nowadays. Looksmaxxers know far too many scientific names for bones and features of the human face that I'm not going to bore you with. If you want to learn more about that, the internet is your oyster, and I send you off. But I sure know what a pronounced hyoid with a recessed maxilla and negative canthal tilt is, thanks to this fuck-ass video. But now that we've gone over the origins of Looksmaxxing, the culture surrounding it in the 2010s was still relatively niche and so much of the terminology, let's go over probably the largest part of Looksmaxxing outside of the technical. How does one even Looksmax? How does one get started in ascending? You guys better like this video because I absolutely destroyed my For You page on TikTok to find out. A lot of Looksmaxxing is based in pseudoscience, but not all of it is. Let's cover out a softmax first and go over what is and isn't scientifically backed up. Like I mentioned earlier, softmaxing is usually reversible and habit-based, and generally falls into the category of self-care. But most Looksmaxxers still took this softmaxing to the extreme. Think going to the gym 6 or 7 days a week and God damn it, I said 6, 7. Anyway, that and dieting. 1 gram of protein per pound that they weigh each day. Well, this might sound crazy to some of us who live life insanely unhealthily. This is backed up by science. And to build muscle mass as fast as possible, this is the general rule of thumb. But only if you're actively exercising to burn those calories off. Further on diet, a big part of Looksmaxxing is trying to get your body fat percentage down and debloating your face so that you lose baby fat on your face, and your body is more toned. And to do this, they suggest increasing your potassium and drinking 3 liters of water a day, which, again, scientifically backed and encouraged. I could rattle on all day about the dieting tips they suggest, like cutting processed foods, low sodium, ingredient-based diets, etc. But we'd be here all day. The point is, this is usually scientifically backed, and eating healthy makes you healthier, especially when paired with the gym. This is just basic self-improvement. Most self-care stuff is generally advised. Think proper skincare routine, like the opening to American Psycho. God damn it, these motherfuckers think they're Patrick Bateman. But yes, again, scientifically backed. And also, chin and neck exercises to make your jawline pop. Normally also supported. Now, this is all normal self-care so far. Let's talk about some softmaxes that lean more towards pseudoscience. Looksmaxxers describe people's eyes as hunter eyes, which are desirable, or prey eyes, which are undesirable. They encourage eye exercises to change the shape and tilt of one's eyes, which unfortunately is genetic. I'm sure we've all heard of mewing at this point. It might be the Looksmaxxing technique we all think of when we think of Looksmaxxing. Mewing is just having the resting position of your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and it supposedly causes forward bone growth on your face for a stronger chin and jawline. But the science behind this is iffy. For adults, it's generally scientifically accepted that it won't change the shape of your face, but it can slightly help for those still going through puberty and growing. I'm pretty sure mewing has always been my default resting position for my tongue for most of my life, and I'm not sure if you can see, but I don't think I particularly have the strongest chin, and my jawline's okay on some days. But this is entirely anecdotal, so take it with a grain of salt. Council's out. There's a ton of softmaxes I haven't covered, but these are the big ones I was able to do some solid research on, and on the whole, I'll say, yeah. Softmaxing usually helps with your appearance. Some things more minorly than advertised, but it's really just slang for self-care, and I'd actually encourage doing some of them if you're looking for results. I'll probably adopt some of them since I've been feeling a bit insecure lately. Not nearly to the degree as most of these Looksmaxxers who turn it into their entire lives, though. But that's exactly the type of trap that people fall into and what drives them to pursue hardmaxing, which is significantly more rooted in pseudoscience. Let's talk about it. Hardmaxing is typically what Looksmaxxers turn to if softmaxing isn't giving them the results they want or is working too slowly. And for reference, when you look up hardmaxing on TikTok, it shows you self-help and prevention hotlines instead, which seems like a great segue to talk about bone smashing. Yes, you heard me right. Bone smashing is a technique where one uses a heavy object or their fist to hit themselves in the face on their cheekbones and chin to fracture their bones, citing Wolff's Law, which states that bones adapt and remold when force is applied to them, which is true. But that is under the condition of controlled pressure like playing tennis or lifting weights, not applying blunt force trauma to your face, which can cause facial deformities, asymmetry in your face, as well as severe nerve damage. So the risk is far more harm than good. So you might be thinking, wow, that sounds fucking insane and can only come from a place of deep insecurity that drives someone to do that. And, well, you'd be right. I don't have a rebuttal to that. You hit it on the nose. Good job. All that said, bone smashing absolutely started as a meme. People were just fucking with each other. But at this point, it absolutely caught on and became all too common in the Looksmaxxing community. Looksmaxxing at a point goes from self-care all the way to self-mutilation, and people cross that line all too often in pursuit of looking as good as they can by any means necessary. Another hardmaxing technique is plastic surgery. Plastic surgery has been around forever, and things like double jaw surgery to restructure the shape of your face do work, but the risk is pretty high for botched surgeries. Just think of all the celebrities who have become genuinely uncanny after receiving plastic surgery. That's not to say that's the case all the time, and no matter your opinion on it, I'm sure most of us can agree this is a significantly better option than hitting yourself in the face repeatedly with a hammer. This might be controversial of me to put on the hardmaxing list, but I'd argue sticking needles in yourself and injecting stuff outside of medical instruction is pretty intense. A lot of Looksmaxxers have started injecting themselves with human growth hormone, testosterone, and peptides outside of medical advice or supervision, which sounds really scary, but does it work though? Peptides are causing quite a lot of buzz online, especially lately on TikTok. They're naturally occurring amino acids in our body that regulate almost every bodily function. But in this context, they're being manufactured to be injected into the human body to improve natural processes. The three most famous Looksmaxxing peptides are GHK-Cu, MT2, and RETA. Let's talk about what each one does because there's a lot of empty promises and misinformation online surrounding them. GHK-Cu reduces wrinkles, tightens your skin, promotes hair growth, and heals acne scars. MT2 tans your skin and has the side effects of suppressed appetite and increased libido. And retatrutide, or RETA for short, is an experimental synthetic peptide that is not yet FDA approved that promotes weight loss. A lot of Looksmaxxers claim it can hollow your cheeks, but this is still up in the air considering it's still having research done on it. Now, you might be thinking, if it's experimental and not FDA approved, how are Looksmaxxers getting a hold of it? In fact, how are they getting a hold of any of these peptides? They couldn't possibly be buying them over the counter, and most doctors wouldn't be willing to prescribe injectable peptides just so some 19-year-old can mog people. So, what's up? Most Looksmaxxers are buying research-only use peptides from shady websites online to inject into their faces that say on them, not for human consumption. But does it work though? Peptides promote growth that your body is already capable of. It doesn't reshape your bone structure like some people claim online, but they do have results, unfortunately. Does this mean I encourage taking them? Absolutely not. You should not inject research chemicals you find online into your face. But, my body is not a temple, so do whatever the fuck you want, I guess. I'm sure I've excluded so many Looksmaxxing techniques, and people in my comments are gonna be like, oh, you forgot this one, or you forgot that one, but I really think we've covered a lot of the major bases, and I'd like to talk about where Looksmaxxing is today, because I wouldn't be making this video, and you wouldn't be watching it if it wasn't relevant. And if you remember the opening to this video, there's one man in particular I'd like to talk about. Looksmaxxing really took off in 2022, grew in 2023 on TikTok and gained mainstream awareness, with a lot of distancing done from its incel roots, with some terms changing and merging together, such as blackpill or BP being the mindset and Looksmaxxing becoming the solution, with the rise of BP edits that were just edits of Looksmaxxers mogging normal people. But the movement didn't really have a figurehead, just a lot of vague posts about mogging people and how to Looksmax. But in the calm, a storm was brewing, and in 2025, a poster boy for Looksmaxxing took the stage. Meet Clavicular. Braden Peters, known online as Clavicular, had his story begin far before he gained prominence online. Up on screen is a before Looksmaxxing and after Looksmaxxing photo of him, which makes you wonder if it actually worked, because there's obviously a difference. But let's talk about how he got here. He started taking steroids when he was only 14 years old, and over the next 4 years ascended by any means necessary, by doing basically every single Looksmaxxing technique I discussed, and then some. He popularized bone smashing and brought it out of meme territory by doing it unironically, and claimed it gave him results. He stayed relatively underground until he was 19 in 2025, and quickly became a mainstream celebrity over the course of the year, collaborating with Cookie King, Aiden Ross, Sneeko, Jack Doherty, and even Nick Fuentes, which, if you recognize any of those names, you'll immediately realize how many right-wing and even alt-right figures he collaborated with. While Clavicular isn't a political content creator, he's very much leans in that direction by association and is somewhere in an alt-right pipeline for sure. He's definitely a controversial guy. He was kicked out of his college when it was discovered he was taking steroids and other injectable Looksmaxxing drugs on campus, but this didn't cause too much of a halt in momentum for him, because content creation became his primary job at this point. He also said the N-word, like a lot, and was just on the whole a massive douchebag. Roll some clips.
Collab with Sky Bree. She quit doing porn. And what are we gonna do? Have a conversation? Unless she's sucking it, I ain't doing a collab.
Clav was on the Epstein files. I probably would have been if I was alive back then. You know what I'm saying?
I'm telling you, once a girl is not a virgin, her value is nothing.
It's like, motherfucker, why do you want to last long? Oh, for the girl's pleasure. Oh, whoop-de-fucking-do. Fuck you, buddy.
So you're not trying to make a girl come?
What, do you want to go to a feminist rally for the next stream? Like, the fuck, what are you talking about?
Let's get into it. That's not the reason I'm mean to you? Well, I mean, I'm just an honest, you know what I mean?
Okay, talk to me like a real person.
Talk to you like a real person?
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of getting on my nerves, and I don't really want to fuck you that bad, but like, your chances of me doing it are dropping.
Your ego is crazy!
I'm telling you. Listen, I'm telling you. If the stream wasn't going and I actually was trying with you, you'd be in the back of my car sucking it right now.
Dude, I'm not even a misogynist.
Clavicular didn't only take steroids, testosterone, and peptides, which, by the way, caused him to be infertile, but he recently, within the last year, started smoking crystal meth purely to Looksmax and hollow out his cheeks. I wish I was joking, but I am not. He also took a variety of prescription medications to self-medicate his autism. Too many to count, honestly. Needless to say, he really repopularized Looksmaxxing, especially peptides, and brought it back into the mainstream full force in 2025. Because whether anyone wanted to say it or not, he looked better post Looksmaxxing. But because of how much crazy shit he did, it's hard to tell which parts of it actually helped and which parts were just him hitting himself in the face repeatedly with metal objects. Well, he looked better anyway until he started smoking too much crystal meth and took too much MT2, and he just started looking like Withered Freddy from FNAF 2. God, I keep mentioning FNAF in my videos lately. I've gotta get outside. Supposedly, though, he stopped doing meth recently, so good for him. As shitty of a person as he is, I genuinely am proud of him in a weird way. I do see an asshole when I watch clips of him, but I've really just been watching a lot of clips of him out of morbid curiosity, and even if he's not a good dude, he is admittedly fun to watch in small bursts. But what I also see is a poor, insecure kid who lost his way, being truly overtaken by his insecurities. Now that I'm saying this, I realize it's really funny to call him a kid as though I'm not only a year older than him. But like I said, this really all does boil down to insecurity. Even if the new generation of Looksmaxxers didn't start as incels like the first generation of them did, the same insecurity is what drove them to join these circles that were still very much based on those principles. Not being man enough or attractive enough is driving their entire lives. This isn't about self-improvement for almost all of them, but rather a longing to belong, to be able to fulfill the role of man in the modern day, and be able to feel good enough, because clearly society isn't making them feel good enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't be basing their entire self-worth around their jawlines and how toned their bodies were. It's just sad. It really is. I hate to see a community that's built around tearing your peers down for not mogging hard enough and encouraging them to absolutely destroy their bodies to fit unrealistic beauty standards. This stems from an insane amount of body dysmorphia to pick apart every single flaw you see with your appearance to try being good enough. I mentioned towards the beginning of the video that looksmaxxing is men giving themselves a taste of the female experience, which is true in my opinion. Body dysmorphia is something that both men and women suffer from, but statistics seem to imply that historically it's an issue women have faced more often, but this gap is quickly shrinking over the years. This can be attributed to men being more encouraged to talk about their emotions in the modern day than in the past, and some of these men who have always been insecure are finding community in looksmaxxing circles that are encouraging them to do damage to their own bodies and obsess over their appearance. Like I said earlier, yes, looks do matter, but if you base your entire self-worth around that, it creates an endless cycle of just trying to improve with no end in sight until you're doing crystal meth to hollow out your cheeks. So, you want to feel better about yourself and get some more social attention? Sure, go softmax, go to the gym, lose some body fat, eat healthy, take care of yourself. But once that becomes your only goal, you need to remember to not push yourself too hard and that looks aren't the only important factor. You'll get nowhere if you're only working on your appearance and not who you are as a person, because doing that is ignoring the core factor that drives this compulsion in the first place. I was originally going to keep the video going for a while from this point. I was originally going to do a 30-day challenge and turn my body into a science experiment and do every single looksmaxxing technique I could find to prove if it worked or not, and if there was any social change from this. But then I realized a few things. If I did do this and absolutely destroyed my body for content, the message wouldn't be take care of yourself because it helps. It'd be some of this stuff helps, so you should inject your face with research chemicals and bash it with a hammer and hope that's one of the things that helps. Oh, and also it would have absolutely killed viewer attention and watch time. And yes, the main reason I didn't do this was because it would hurt watch time. What can I say? I'd do anything for content. All that said, I really hope you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't, and you hate watched the whole thing through and think I'm an LTN asymmetrical Rizless chud, feel free to grab any clip from this video and use it as the intro to a BP edit. I think that'd be pretty funny. There's probably a lot of good ones in there of me saying looks aren't everything or whatever. Just make sure to tag me. My TikTok is @BenOverIt_. But after all this, do looks matter? Yes. But should you obsess over them and base your entire self-worth around it? Absolutely not. But we've already been over it. Thanks for watching.